everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the office. We're continuing our series of the blog posts, but first, like the video if you enjoy my content and maybe subscribe to the channel to let the algorithm know that. Thank you so much, because today we got kind of a hot take. Okay, you ready for this? It's called Gender Dysphoria is Normal. And it starts with a quote, "Being a girl and hitting puberty is so traumatic." An anonymous Tumblr post expressed a common shame in simple words. It rippled through gender-critical social media in the form of screenshots after the original post was quickly deleted. Her spurt of stifled frustration struck a chord, breathlessly relating a first-hand account of female suppression. You go from being a genderless little free thing to being hit with shaving and makeup and growing breasts and skincare and menstruation and suddenly being sexualized. When, like, a few years ago, you could take your shirt off to play in the stream and trade cards with the boys and come home covered in mud and not even think about it. But eventually you realized everyone around you is thinking about it. Compliments focus on appearance or social skills, while questions often get uncomfortably personal. That sudden societal burden can combine with newly dawning self-awareness to create a perception of generalized critical observation. Others have expectations you can't meet, and a young person might not consider that those expectations are unreasonable. Especially when most people seem like they are doing fine. Suppressing stories like this one furthers the myth that most girls are just fine with femininity. And then you spend years hating being a girl and hating everything puberty did to your body and wishing you could be a boy or be completely genderless again, and it takes you many years to come to terms with yourself. Or you simply try to lean in to everything and do makeup tutorials on YouTube and claim it's for fun. How can this be treated as normal? This hatred denial continuum seems to mimic the classic whore-virgin dichotomy, doesn't it? The bitter invocation of Sheryl Sandberg taps a deep well of bile from digesting many betrayals. Powerful women often become so by learning to play the boys' game, which many of us are just not very good at. They join the elite chorus of supposed meritocracy, clinging to their ego-driven narrative as tightly as any man. Naturally, the framing of this as a women's issue had to be squashed. Quote, "To be honest, this sounds like the kind of thing a transgender or non-binary person who is assigned female at birth might feel once puberty hits. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but it's just what comes to mind." End quote. This person admits to not knowing what they're talking about, but feels free to weigh in on this young woman's life. And irony and misogyny continue their slugfest for supremacy. But there were some responses claiming more authority. 100% this. I am trans, and this is what dysphoria feels like. This is gender dysphoria. Okay, let's assume for a moment that this is true. If gender is a social construct that's imposed on us, it makes sense that a one-size-fits-all approach will cause some people issues. I suppose it could be. Is it also possible that cis kids could struggle with puberty? A reasonable suggestion. Let's see how they disregard it. Sure it is. And plenty of cis girls complain about how society's perception of them changes and the pressure put on them to act a certain way increases. They don't, however, spend years hating their bodies and never fully recover. Thanks for the heads up that you have absolutely no first-hand experience with this topic. Women's body issues are their own cottage industry. Looking back and wishing they had never gone through puberty and that they still look genderless. OP is trans or non-binary 99%. Alright, I forgot gender is innate and springs forth from deep-seated personal essence. It's so easy to get confused when they oscillate more than Brian Eno. Nice little nerdy reference for my music nerds out there. Love you. And of course, someone stepped in to tell her what a weirdo she is. Look, I agree puberty isn't fun. This is not a normal reaction to it. This person who wrote this seems like they are probably trans or non-binary. Most people, regardless of gender, struggle with some aspects of puberty, but it doesn't make the majority of us hate who we are or our gender. Struggling with sexual stereotypes is the basis for a lot of friction and static in women's lives. Far from demonstrating a lack of womanhood, it may be the most common shared experience. It speaks to the shame surrounding it, that this sensation was only recently named. But someone else came right out and said what they were all thinking. Fresh meat. Maybe you were just a boy or genderless? Plenty of cis women can probably relate to not liking gender stereotypes or over-sexualization, but cis women don't hate being women, LOL. And plenty of women hate sex stereotypes and still find joy in womanhood because we've learned not to take them personally. We understand that stereotypes are like Bigfoot. Lots of sightings, but very little proof. We understand that our culture's idea of what women are is generic and shallow, disconnected from the reality of our lives. I hope the young woman who wrote this, has found a more understanding audience. But I was glad to see it floating around. The more stories like this are shared, the more obvious it will become that gender dysphoria is a normal part of growing up. Individuality is our strength, but conformity makes us disposable. This is exactly how patriarchy wants to see us, and normal mental development plays right into its hands. Part of it is the shock of sudden self-awareness that strikes with puberty. Younger children are less conscious of how they are seen by others, dwelling blissfully in the warm glow of their own ego. Around the age of 12 or so, neurological development reaches the conceptualization of those same passions in everyone else. Suddenly the world is looking back at you, and just when you're least prepared. In the cataclysmic shifts of body and mind, chunks of once established reality come into question. Social pressures can be one of the few beacons of certainty. The gender industry relies on these stories remaining shameful secrets. This young woman's experience may be more extreme than some, but these commenters used women's isolation and suffering to tell her she was alone. Divide and conquer. Rinse, repeat. It's normal and rational to get jet lag on the trip from subject to object. It's painful to squeeze an entire human being into a shallow stereotype. If this is gender dysphoria, we all have it. Embracing this would defang it, robbing this discomfort of the power to overtake our psyches. Rejecting the stigma of failing to adhere to feminine ideals is an important step on the road to liberation, and it would show young women that we all carry this burden. Struggling as most women do doesn't make you less of a woman. So, that is a big one, I think. Actually, a big point that I've tried to make many times. I hope that it hits all of you, the way that I intended to. They've just taken something that has existed for ages that young people have experienced forever and given it a new name and recontextualized it to support their narrative. And I'm not having it. There will be a link down below to the blog post so you can read it for yourself and read more if you like. And, spread the word. Feeling like a freak when you're a teenager is the most normal thing in the world. And struggling with sexual stereotypes is probably the most common female experience in the world. So like the video if you enjoyed. Go to the blog, read the blog, yay! Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks a lot, bye.